It began as a faint intuition, doesn't it always? A subtle shift in her demeanor, a softness in her tone when she'd say, "I'm meeting a friend for lunch." It was the sort of softness you only notice if you've grown used to sharper edges, the kind that life's routine polishes away. Or so I had thought. Laura and I had been married for 8 years. 8 years filled with early morning coffee rituals, shared dreams whispered in the quiet hours, and the unspoken bond that comes from truly knowing another person. I believed we were solid. Sure, there were disagreements here and there, but what marriage didn't have those? I chalked it all up to the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. That was before the message. It was late one evening, and her phone rested on the couch beside me. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen lit up with a notification, and my eyes betrayed me. The words burned into my mind. "Can't stop thinking about today." The text came from an unfamiliar number. When I asked her about it, she laughed nervously, brushing it off as part of a group chat. "You know how girls are," she said. I nodded, playing along, but deep down, a pit formed in my stomach. Something was off, very, very off. The cracks widened over the following weeks. Her lunch outings became more frequent, her explanations vaguer. One afternoon, as she left her phone unattended, I did something I'm not proud of. I looked through it. What I found shattered me. The messages weren't merely flirty or suggestive. They were explicit. Her so-called friend was a man named Eric, and their exchanges left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. These weren't just casual encounters. They were steeped in emotional intimacy, the kind we used to share. For days, I carried the knowledge alone, paralyzed by indecision. Should I confront her? Walk away? Demand answers? None of those options felt right. Instead, I chose something entirely out of character. I planned. The pieces fell into place quickly. With some digging through social media, I uncovered Eric's identity. He was a colleague of Laura's, someone she'd worked with on a recent project. Eric was married, too, to a woman named Christine. Her Facebook profile revealed a kind-looking woman with soft brown hair and 2 young children. My heart ached for her, but I didn't let it stop me. I hired a private investigator, Frank, a no-nonsense guy who looked like he'd seen it all. His photos confirmed my worst fears. Laura and Eric leaving a hotel together, walking arm in arm, laughter lighting up their faces. There was even a picture of them kissing in her car. I now had proof, irrefutable evidence of her betrayal. With the evidence in hand, I reached out to Christine. My message was brief but direct. "Hi, Christine. This is hard to say, but I believe your husband, Eric, is involved with my wife, Laura. I've attached some photos. I'm sorry to bring this to you." Her reply came an hour later. It was a single line. "Thank you for letting me know." I'd set things in motion, and there was no turning back. But I wasn't finished. Laura needed to feel the weight of her choices. So, I invited her to lunch. "Let's have a date," I suggested with a forced smile. "Just us. It's been a while." She seemed almost relieved, maybe thinking I was oblivious or trying to fix what wasn't broken. Little did she know, this wasn't a rekindling. It was a reckoning. The day arrived. I prepared everything carefully. A spotless white tablecloth, our best silverware, and 2 glasses of wine. It looked like the picture of romance. But instead of flowers at the center of the table, there was a plain manila envelope. The culmination of my careful planning, the envelope filled with proof of betrayal sat in the center of the table like an ominous beacon. When Laura entered the room, her face was glowing, her smile wide, likely from the high of her supposed lunch date. But her steps faltered when she noticed the setup. Her gaze flicked nervously from the envelope to me. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. I didn't respond. Instead, I motioned for her to sit. She hesitated, the smile on her face fading into an uneasy expression, but eventually she obeyed. Slowly, I slid the envelope toward her. "Open it," I instructed, my tone steady but unyielding. Her fingers lingered on the clasp before she finally opened it, pulling out the damning contents. As her eyes scanned the photos and printed text messages, her expression morphed from confusion to panic. Her hands trembled. "I can explain," she blurted out, though her words carried little conviction. "Explain?" I leaned back in my chair, my voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. "Explain what? That you've been deceiving me for months? That you've been sneaking around with another man? A married man, no less? Or that you've thrown our marriage away like it meant nothing?" Tears filled her eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she whispered, "It's not what you think." "Then tell me, Laura," I demanded, my voice rising with frustration. "What exactly is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you wanted it all. The marriage, the affair, and none of the consequences." She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, muttering apologies that sounded hollow and meaningless. I let her cry, let her confront the mess she had created. When she finally lifted her tear-streaked face to meet my eyes, I dropped the next bombshell. "I've already spoken to Christine," I said, watching her reaction closely. Her face paled as her eyes widened in sheer horror. "You what?" she stammered. "She knows everything," I said coldly. "Just like I do." "Congratulations, Laura. You didn't just destroy one family, but two." A sharp knock interrupted the charged silence. Laura whipped her head toward the door, confusion and dread mingling on her face. I stood and opened it, revealing Christine. She stepped inside, her expression calm, though her eyes burned with fury. And behind her was Eric, looking like a deer caught in headlights. "What is this?" Laura whispered, her voice cracking. "This," I said, my tone icy, "is closure." What followed was chaos. Christine wasted no time unleashing her anger, years of frustration pouring out as she confronted Eric. He fumbled, struggling to form coherent sentences, but she cut through his weak excuses with a ferocity that left no room for defense. Laura tried to intervene, but Christine turned on her, her words laced with venom. "Don't you dare," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "Don't you dare try to justify what you've done. You're selfish, deceitful, and—" Christine's language spiraled into terms far too cutting for polite company. Eric made a feeble attempt to explain, muttering something about feeling neglected at home. I couldn't contain my anger any longer. "Neglected?" I barked, my laugh bitter and sharp. "You have two beautiful children and a wife who's done nothing but love and support you. And this is how you repay her, by destroying everything." By the end, the room was heavy with raw emotion. Laura and Eric looked like shattered reflections of the people they had been just moments before walking into that room. Christine and I exchanged a glance, one filled with unspoken understanding. We had both survived the storm, and we were stronger for it. The fallout was swift. Laura packed her things that very evening and moved out. The next day, I filed for divorce and Christine did the same. Eric's world crumbled further when Christine shared the evidence with his employer, costing him his job. As for Laura, her reputation took a nosedive as the truth of her affair spread through our social circles. The consequences of their actions came crashing down, and they had no one to blame but themselves. For me, the road to healing wasn't easy. There were nights when the tears wouldn't stop, mornings when getting out of bed felt like an impossible task. But over time, the pain dulled. I sought therapy, started running, and reconnected with friends I had neglected over the years. A year later, I found peace. I rediscovered my worth, learning to demand honesty and respect in my relationships. As for Laura and Eric, last I heard, their relationship couldn't withstand the weight of their guilt. Revenge may not be the noblest motivator, but sometimes it's the spark that ignites change. And in the end, I reclaimed my life, piece by piece,